Hey, everybody. This one was sent to me by a friend of mine in Canada who is worried about reprisals by the Canada Department, the Revenue Agency pigs, thieves. And I offered to let them narrate the thing, and they don't even want their voice on it. Eh? This one's titled Canada Department of So-Called Justice Aids Tax Agency, that's the Canada Revenue Agency, thieves to defraud 240 plus Canadians. This is part one. They got another one they're working on. And anybody in America ought to listen to this because this is exactly why they want to steal the guns so they can get away with this kind of garbage. And that's why they get away with it in Canada, because they did steal the guns. Anyway, so let's get going. There's another 2,400 that wait possible prosecution. Canada's Department of So-Called Justice and the Canada Revenue Agency, thieves, work together to manipulate court results to deny Canadians a remedy. Well, why is that a surprise? They're all these whores are bought and paid for. One of Canada's largest tax scandals. Have you seen about it in the news? Have you seen it in the news or heard about it? Of course not. They are trying to hush this up big time, and that's why we're doing this video. It's called the Fiscal Damara Gate, involving fiscal arbitrators and Damara Consulting. Accounting agencies use a tax reduction strategy used by Fortune 500 companies to help Canadians reduce their tax liability and reduce the burden of tax demands. But, they don't mind if their corporate thugs use their certain deductions and all that, but they don't want the little people using it, eh? They want to keep their thumb on the little people. They use a process direct from the Canada Revenue Agency, thieves, issued and sanctioned by the Income Tax Act of Canada, called the T5008 process. The Canada Revenue Agency thieves would have had to refund Canadians over $200 million, and we can't have that. We don't want anybody being free here. We got to have slaves. In fact, some refunds were issued until the Canada Revenue Agency thieves realized how much it would cost. Instead of following the Income Tax Act rules and the T5008 guidelines as required, the Canada Revenue Agency thieves, the agents, issued fraudulent gross negligence charges against the taxpayers, which there's some debate about whether that too, okay, because most of these people are just private people trying to get along, and so they're thieves. To this day, no Canada Revenue Agency agent has been able to justify their calculations, nor will they supply them to their victims. Stop tax terrorism. These people are thieves. This is all about war crimes, folks. This is all about war crimes. The occupying force is the Royal Canadian Mounted Pigs. People on pensions, fixed incomes, and disability were assessed $750,000 to $1 million plus in fake charges, so they could steal your property. The Canada Revenue Agency thieves converted expense claims into understated income. Expense claims that were submitted under an application for review per the Income Tax Act. Expense claims cannot be penalized in accordance with the Canada Revenue Agency Tax Operation Manual, but that's okay. They just went ahead and did it anyways. But the Canada Revenue Agency thieves, the rogue agents, did it anyway. How did I know that? To reestablish fraudulent gross negligence charges. They want some people to put them in a hotel. There's no statutory basis or authority for any debt obligation claims under Section 163 of the Income Tax Act to do this. They don't need a reason. If you're a slave, folks. A refund process as identified under Section 152 of the Income Tax Act related to a review and application of business loss deductions. Victims of the Canada Revenue Agency scandal, the thieves, tried to hire liars. Well, why would you expect liars to be anything but liars? Across Canada to get help. But were denied and manipulated. or charged $5,000 for very little work, then the liar suddenly dropped them as a client. Why is that a surprise? They're all bought and paid for. They're liars. Even notaries refuse to stamp the victim's affidavit. So that sounds like perjury of oath. More war crimes here. Sounds like a little bit like conspiracy. Yeah, you got that right. Why is that a surprise? The Canada Revenue Agency thieves also violated a court order refusing to return victims' files so they could file the tax court appeals. Why is that a surprise? End Canada Revenue Agency thieves' abuses. End the Canada Revenue Agency. I think that's an even better idea. Who's in charge of the national scale fraud? The Minister of National Revenue, Diane Lebouth-Hillier, and CRA Commissioners Andrew Trush and Bob Hamilton. There's where the buck stops, folks. The Minister of National Revenue, Diane Lebouth-Hillier, and Canada Revenue Agency Thieves Commissioners Andrew Trush, Bob Hamilton, and the Court of Appeals, Michael Snow. Wow, that's quite a handle. Snow. Witnesses at Damara Consulting trial saw unusual behavior between the Crown, pigs, and defense counsels. Why is that surprising? They're bought and paid for. The Crown pigs were seen coaching the defense lawyer while he was questioning Crown witnesses. Why is that a surprise? They're bought and paid for. And judicial corruption. It's not a court. It's a kangaroo court. They're judicial whores. They're selling their justice. They're bought and paid for. The Crown pigs and the so-called judges suppressed evidence that would have supported the defendant's case. Of course. That's part of having an admiralty proceeding. They want to change the rules if it's going to embarrass the business of the court. Absolutely. The Crown liars recycled witnesses and defense arguments from other cases to help aid guilty verdicts. Of course. The defense liar brought forward very few witnesses, and those he did bring forward, he barely questioned. Why is that a surprise? They're liars. The Canada Revenue Agency thieves refused to provide proper disclosure by redacting critical privacy information contained in the victim's files. The level of corruption in this case is unprecedented. Have you heard about it? Probably not. They're trying to sweep this under the carpet. That's what these Satanist pigs do. A liar in a recent CBC News article says the Canada Revenue Agency is broken. It's not broken. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. They are thieves. So what are the politicians doing about it? Well, politicians, politics is a compound word, right? Poly meaning many and ticks meaning blood-sucking insects. Ask them. Demand results. This is your future and your kids. Yeah, you got that right. Stop Canada Revenue Agency thieves. Stop Canada Revenue Agency pirates. Actually, I think a better idea is just stop the Canada Revenue Agency, period. Who steal first and then make to spend your life savings and 10 or more years for the possible return of your property. They're thieves. That's called pillaging, folks. That's a war crime. Oh, almost forgot. The Canada Revenue Agency agents issued fake RTPs masquerading as court orders from their desks. Why is that a surprise? It's not a court. No judicial review, no court process, unsigned. Of course, those Satanists don't want to put their name on something under fake or no names. Of course, they use pseudonyms with no notice or to knowingly wrong addresses. Of course, they're thieves. They're more interested in just stealing things, but they got to jump through the hoops and justify it. The debt is to be reviewed by federal court, then issued by the Central Tech Office in Ottawa. None of that happened. Why is that a surprise? So the Canada Revenue Agency thieves could guarantee an admiralty default process to earn hefty commissions and meet daily intake goals. Yeah, quotas. Yeah, you bet. They're thieves. How is this known? Disgruntled Canada Revenue Agency agents have come forward saying these are regular practices condoned by Canada Revenue Agency superiors. You know, anybody that's in America needs to be aware of all this, because that's why they want to take the guns, okay? They don't want people being able to defend themselves like in Canada. They have taken the guns, and people can't defend themselves against these thieves. The Canada Revenue Agency agents are given the go-ahead to use any means and corrupt tactics to get results. But if they get caught, they'll be protected. Of course, they're pigs, they're thieves. This has included threats, stalking, contacting employers, contractors, friends, families that a debt is owed, illegal confiscating property, homes from victims. That's pillaging, folks. That's reprisals, folks. That's persecuting people for their political beliefs, folks. These are all war crimes. Emptying bank accounts without notice, that's pillaging, folks. 100% garnishments, leaving people on disability or pensions with nothing to live on. That's pillaging, folks. The Canada Revenue Agency thieves' behavior has been unreasonable, illogical, power-hungry, and they feel like they're invincible. Of course, why would they not? They got a bunch of bought and paid-for whores masquerading as judges. They got a bunch of liars that are working in their court, and you can't find a real counsel of any kind. It's bought and paid for. It's a kangaroo court. They're destroying people's life. They're regularly heard gloating about their activities. Some people are even committing suicide. Oh, but they wanted to do a commercial contract. That's what these Canada Revenue Agency pigs, we ought to stretch some of their necks. And then when somebody says anything, oh, gee, I'm so sorry. I thought he wanted to engage in a commercial transaction. The Canada Revenue Agency pigs have violated a court order. In the case of LaRue, the Canada Revenue Agency has a duty of care. The breaching privacy laws. Some victims have been threatened by sheriffs wielding guns. Gee, that sounds like an armed conflict. That's why they want you to make sure you don't have the means to defend yourself against these pigs. They're telling friends and family and employers they're responsible for the debt, and if they don't garnish or cooperate, they'll be sued. Well, go ahead, sue me. Go ahead, make my day. The Canada Revenue Agency pigs contact friends and family employers saying they're responsible for the debt, and if they don't, I guess I must have read that one already. Sound like uttering threats? A criminal code violation? Sound like coercion? Sound like terrorism? This is all war crimes, folks. They use their draconian gun laws to make sure you can't defend yourself from the thieves. That's a fact, folks. And you get to go to jail. And you don't have any way to defend yourself against the pigs. If this were done by you and me, ordinary men and women, do you think we'd be free in the world? No. We'd be in jail faster than lightning. Of course. That's why they use their draconian gun laws to make sure you can't defend yourself from the thieves. That's what's coming in America, folks. They take the guns. This is the kind of stuff you're going to see. Do you ever hear of them going to jail? Absolutely not. Welcome to the two-tiered just us system. Absolutely. They're nothing but whores. They're bought and paid for. There is no justice with these Satanist whores. We ought to stretch their neck. Does all this sound like terrorism, war crimes, breach of human rights, breach of duty of care, malicious prosecution? You got that right. Matter of fact, terrorism is a noun, is a system of government that seeks to rule by intimidation. And hello, folks, that's what's going on. Remember the Minister of National Revenue who's in charge? To cover her tracks so it doesn't look like criminal breaches by the Canada Revenue Agency pigs. You know what she's doing? She's issuing blue ink signature letters after the theft of victims. Oh, isn't that so nice? To make it appear there was a contract in place. If there's a contract, it can't be criminal, or so she thinks. Well, why don't we just stretch her neck and then say, oh, gee, we're so sorry. We thought you wanted to do a commercial transaction. But we all know we're busted. You're busted, Diane. Do you think they should all go to jail, criminally charged? The law says yes. Think they will? Absolutely not. Let Ottawa know. Let's see how serious this open government for the people is. And none of this, it's for the public's best interest crap. We've heard it before. CRA is a private collection agency for the bankster thieves. They use their draconian gun laws to make sure you can't defend yourself. That's exactly what goes on in Canada. They don't want you being able to defend yourself. They want to be able to attack you, assault you, kidnap you, imprison you with impunity. Send a message to Trudeau and his cabinet. End tax terrorism. Stop the Canada Revenue Agency thieves' corruption. End Canada Revenue Agency. End Canada Revenue Agency. Screw the abuse. Screw the corruption. Let's give them all stretch their necks. Hold these agents liable. Part 2 is coming soon. Contact your PM or MLA. Issue a service complaint to the Canada Revenue Agency pigs. File privacy complaints for breaches. File war crimes complaints. That's exactly what's going on. These Canada Revenue Agencies are engaging in terrorism, pillaging, and reprisals in violation of Article 3. Collective penalties, likewise all measures of intimidation or of terrorism are prohibited. Pillage is prohibited. Reprisals against protected persons and their property is prohibited. That's exactly what's going on. Canada Revenue Agency's terrorists are threatening and coercing people to get information from them in violation of Article 31. No physical or moral coercion shall be exercised against protected persons, in particular to obtain information from them or from third parties. Let's just stretch their neck, and if anybody says anything, oh, gee, we're so sorry. We thought they wanted to do a commercial transaction. The CRA terrorists are failing to hold a fair and regular trial in violation of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 14, Clause 1. All persons shall be equal before the courts and tribunal in the determination of any criminal charge against him or of his rights and obligations in a suit at law. Everyone shall be entitled to a fair and public hearing before a competent, independent, impartial tribunal established by law. There is nothing that's independent or impartial. These people, these whores, are all bought and paid for. Under Article 71 of the Geneva Convention relative to the treatment of civilians in a time of war of 1949, it says, no sentence shall be pronounced but by competent courts, the occupying power, except after regular trial. Everyone has the right to own property alone as well as in association with others. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his property. That's the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 17. And this is the Crime Against Humanity and War Crimes Act of Canada. The crime against humanity means, among other things, persecution or any other inhumane act or omission that is committed against any civilian population or any identifiable group. A war crime means an act or omission committed during an armed conflict that at the time and in the place of its commission constitutes a war crime. Well, think about it. When that pig stops you for whatever reason, whether it's Canada Revenue Agency pig or any other pig, he's got gun. And that means it's an armed conflict. The court shall have jurisdiction in respect of war crimes, in particular when committed as part of a plan or policy. For the purpose of this statute, war crimes means grave breaches of the Geneva Conventions of 12 August 1949. There's 4 of them. And one of the things that's taken, see, all of this stuff is taken from the Geneva Convention. Willfully depriving a prisoner of war or other protected persons of the rights of a fair and regular trial. That's a war crime, folks. Unlawful deportation or transfer, unlawful confinement. That's a war crime, folks. When they put on their show trial and then sell you into slavery, that's unlawful confinement. Other serious violations, namely any of the following acts. Destroying or seizing the enemy's property, that's a war crime, folks. Declaring abolished, suspended, and inadmissible in a court of law the rights and actions of the nationals of the hostile party, that's a war crime, folks. That's what they do. That's what these whores do in their so-called courts. That's what Rook did in Alberta, and that's what these whores do on a regular basis. Pillaging a town or place, even when taken by assault, is a war crime, folks. The present convention shall apply to all cases of declared war of any other armed conflict which may arise, even if the state of war is not recognized by one of them. When those pigs come up to you, they're armed. Even if you don't recognize it, that it's a state of war, it is war, folks. The convention shall also apply to all cases of partial or total occupation of the territory of the high contracting party. All of Canada, if you read the Royal Proclamation of 1763, everything west of Quebec is under a military occupation, and the occupying force is the Royal Canadian Mounted Pigs. This is Article 2 of the Geneva Convention relative to the protection of the civilian in a time of war of 1949. Like this video, share this video, tell others. Anybody from Canada that's got a YouTube channel, I'd consider authorizing you to publish it. If you can show me you got lots of subscribers, I'd consider letting you subscribe to this. I want this thing out. Share your feedback below. Thanks for watching, folks. We need to put a stop to this, and we need to know that that's what happens when they take the guns, okay? That's what they did in Canada, and that's what they're trying to do here. And that's what happens when they take the guns, is they just go ahead and do whatever they want, and you can't defend yourself. That's what these pigs do.